There's a lot that we don't talk about, sometimes due to embarrassment, fear, insecurities. We neglect discussions about the most common parts of our lives, things we all deal with, sometimes every day. But on the Caffeinated Gypsy podcast, together, we'll break all of those taboos and talk open and honest about shared experiences. Knowledgeable people relating things you felt but never put into words. Parenting, sex, fitness, energy, anything to connect you to your authentic self, unfiltered. Now, the Caffeinated Gypsy herself, a free spirit, world traveler with a passion for fitness and exploring topics that others might avoid. Hello and welcome to the Caffeinated Gypsy podcast. I'm Stephanie Cotton, your host. Thank y'all so much for being with me today. I'm really excited to be starting this new series. I am going to be doing this indefinitely. It's a series called Women Who Inspire, and I have met so many amazing people over the past year of doing this podcast, and I really wanted to share with you some of the women that I've encountered over the past year who really inspire me, whether it's through their work or it's through their story or it's through their Instagram accounts, whatever it is, in some way, shape, or form, they inspire me every single day. And I thought, well, instead of being selfish and just keeping them to myself, let's share them with all of you. So we're going to be starting our first segment today. But before we get started, just updates. Coffee is up and going. I just released Ritual. This is a really cool blend, you guys. So it is super charged. It is charged with rainbow quartz, which helps open up all of your chakras and balance them. It also helps with your crown chakra specifically, so it helps connect you. So if you're doing any type of meditation, yoga, ritual work, so you're doing new moon, maybe you're doing some magic, anything like that, this is just going to help keep you in a nice meditative state, but also keep you able to focus, because we're really working with opening chakras. It's very grounding, pulling down a lot of that Mars energy, which helps go into action, drive, doing all these things. And it's got a really high vibration. So you're going to notice that this coffee is a little bit stronger than some of the other ones. But I really love this coffee. It's been something I've been working with during my journaling activities, any type of meditation. I used it for a moon ritual last week. It's awesome. So that is on the website, and that's going to be one that stays on there. So, some of the other ones are rotating, but Ritual will always be on there. Also, just wanted to mention, guys, I have ground coffee as an option on there, but I highly encourage people, if you can start thinking about moving over to the whole bean, you are going to notice a difference in the flavor of your coffee. It just stays fresher a lot longer, and it holds all those flavor profiles. And I think whole bean is just better. But if you really like, nope, need ground, it is on there. What else is going on? Patreon. Guys, we're having so much fun in the Caffeinated Gypsy tribe. So if you want to come join, you can go over to Patreon. There's a lot of different levels to this, but all of the ladies in there are a really good group of people. Sometimes you get in those groups and you're like, oh, there's so many people. We have a small group, so it allows everybody to be able to chat with each other, share what's going on, and you get extra things from me, like you get your own podcast, you get journal paper. I try to comment in the group very frequently. I do videos every week. So if you want to come join us and be part of our little tribe, we would love to have you. And trying to think what else is going on. I just did an Astro workshop in Raleigh last week. That was super fun. So yeah, I think that's all the updates for right now. So I'm really excited, you guys. My first guest ever on Women Who Inspire is Elora Burke. And she is somebody who I found via like social media. She started following my podcast and we've connected and we've just become really good friends. And turns out she's also in North Carolina and she used to be a Jehovah's Witness. So, you know, when you hear about like your soul family finding you, she's one of those people. So I'm really excited to share her story, for you guys to meet her. I think she's just a phenomenal human being, and her story of how she was able to leave the Jehovah's Witness organization, and she's really sort of rebuilt her life and found her power and happiness in life. It's really inspiring, and I think you're really going to love her as much as I do. So we're going to go ahead and jump over to that episode with her. Hello, everybody. I'd like to welcome Elora on today. Say hi.
Hi, Stephanie. Hi, everyone.
So I wanted to share with everybody your story, because we connected because we have some similarities, don't we?
Absolutely. We both come from former Jehovah's Witnesses, and when I found your podcast and learned that about you, it totally blew me away. And so I've been really inspired by your podcast and your series, and so glad that we could connect.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. And, you know, when we had a conversation, you guys, we've had a couple of conversations, but we had a conversation, I think it was like last week, when we were talking just about your experience. And one of the things that for me personally really resonates with you is just how much courage it took for you to sort of separate yourself from that, you know, I don't even want to say organization. It's really like your life, because to leave that, like, you're separating yourself from your whole entire life.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a whole entire way of living, and it encompasses your friends, your family, and everything. So to make a change like that was really, really huge and super scary at first. So like, maybe you could share with everybody, for those people who aren't familiar with the Jehovah's Witness organization, what, maybe how much it like infiltrates your life and what it means to actually leave that organization. Well, it kind of like is a lifestyle. So they're encouraged to have your association be with other believers. And so like the way it's set up is just kind of really insulated, I would say. And you are kind of separated from the outside reality. So in a way, you're living in a different reality, kind of, with a set of beliefs and things that you take out into a world that separates you in your mind from the rest of the world. Yeah. So I think that's really hard. I was born and raised as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, so I always had more of a difficulty, I would say, relating to people that weren't. So I think that was huge, and that was one of the biggest struggles when I did leave, was kind of like reintegrating myself and relating to quote unquote normal people. Yeah, no, definitely. Well, and I don't know if you've seen on Netflix, they have this like little series called Explained, and one of the ones they have is on occults. And I'm always obsessed with anything that's occults, because I was like a part of one. So I'm always like just fascinated. So I was watching it over the weekend, and they literally are talking about like what constitutes an occult and then how they operate. And they literally showed like all these different cults that have formed like in the last, 100, 200 years. And Jehovah's Witnesses are on the top of that list. And what's interesting is there's always this form of like power, right? That's how they control everybody. And so in that organization, it's about fear, and a lot of it is it's all male dominated. Yeah, lots of male. As a woman, you have exactly. You have, and literally to the point where like the women are told to be subservient. Yeah, absolutely. You're encouraged to be in submission to a congregation, to your husband, or to your father, whoever's the, leading person in your like little family unit or congregation. You're really kind of admonished to put the group's well-being ahead of maybe your own. My husband, we were talking about that because he was around it, but he wasn't a Jehovah's Witness. In fact, when he started dating me, he was in the military, which is like a huge no-no, and he was not a Jehovah's Witness.
And he was like, what? Like, and I was like, you have to become a Jehovah's Witness. And he was like, what? And I was like, yeah, if you want to be with me, like, you have to get out of the military and you have to be a Jehovah's Witness. And now, like, we laugh about it because he's like, I can't even imagine, like, you part of an organization where people, like, told you what to do.
Well, and I'm sure in your mind that was the only option at that point for that to be able to continue.
Absolutely.
So you are literally thinking in terms of how to make this work always, how to incorporate. It touches every single decision you make in your life.
Absolutely. And I think too, like, you're just always in fear. Like, there's this,
I was terrified all the time. Right. Absolutely.
So maybe you can share with everybody, like, what kind of fear tactics they use. Because I feel like even if you're not part of, you haven't been part maybe of an actual a cult, and I'm not saying like religion is bad, but there's a lot of fear that's put into religion in general. That's how people are controlled. So I think that's a very strong tool that a lot of people and organizations use to control people. So maybe you could share some of the ways they kind of use fear to control people in that organization.
Well, I think as a Jehovah's Witness, your future view of the world is that there are going to be changes, and the only people that are going to be left are faithful Jehovah's Witnesses. And so your options are you going to do this, or are you going to do something different? And then ultimately, the only choice you're facing is death. And anyone else that's not going to choose those beliefs and decisions, that's the choice that they're facing too, that there really are those only two options. So I didn't really see a middle ground or a place to be, in between that. And just removing myself from that, you just get such a longer view of the world. And being able to say, okay, there is life outside of that. There is people outside of that. There are decisions that I can make outside of that ultimately could lead to a different outcome. That's not the only outcome that's possible.
Yeah. And how was that for you? How was that for you? Like, we've discussed, you're an empath. Did you know you were an empath when you were a Jehovah's Witness?
I did not. I actually thought that I had trouble connecting with people or feeling emotions. But in actuality, I was just constantly overwhelmed and just emotionally exhausted all the time. I just kind of thought that I had like a weaker life force kind of, and that I was kind of frail and I wasn't very strong. I didn't view myself as a very physically strong person, as a very mentally strong person. So coming out of that and being able to actually take inventory of my skills and my actual personality and my passions and my desires, like, that's totally changed how I interact with myself. I was constantly disassociating from my body and just kind of zoning out of everything, and I just lived inside of my head. I had a lot of like a rich fantasy life and like a rich inner life that I never thought I would be able to mesh with my outer life. So there was always that kind of struggle, and it was exhausting. I just didn't have the energy really to do anything. I've suffered from migraines since I was about 9 years old, and there would be times when they would be so bad that I would be in bed for weeks, really sometimes like most of the time for months at a time. And so it would never really get better from that, but it was because I was just constantly overwhelmed by crowds of people, meetings with people, just constantly surrounded by tons of people who are going through all their own things too, but that they're projecting it on me, and that I could feel all these intricacies with the people that I felt or interacted with, and I never understood why. But my mom was similar, and that was her religion is the way that she, makes sense of the world and interacts with people, and it just wasn't working for me. I couldn't implement those things like she was able to. So I had to find a different way.
Yeah. And I know you had mentioned when we talked that you were like towards the end of your time as a Jehovah's Witness, you were like on anxiety medication and things like that?
Oh, absolutely. I've struggled with intermittent bouts of depression, anxiety, been on medications for them, trouble sleeping, lots of things, and nothing ever really helped. I didn't like how it would make me feel even more of a zombie than I kind of already felt. It was just really, really numbing, and I just couldn't stand to live in my body like that. So I had to switch it up and make some changes, and it's wild because since I've kind of removed myself from that, and towards the end I made some really big breakthroughs in regards to my health and my migraines, which really cleared up my mind, because when you have migraines before and during and after, you have so much of this like fatigue and almost like a mental cloud like fogging you when you're coming in and out of those like bouts of pain. And once I was able to get those more under control with diet, mainly just diet modifications, it was like a light switch went on, and I was able to process so much more information and just really see everything way more clearly. So it gave me that extra little push of energy to make those tough decisions and say, hey, I think if this small thing could make this much of a difference, what kind of other changes can make even more difference? Like, there's hope I could be happy. There's hope I could be healthier. There's hope I could feel more loved, that I could love myself more, and that I could just interact with people differently. There's a different way of being in the world that was possible, which was huge.
Yeah. And I know most people probably don't realize, but to leave and make like a decision, like, okay, I'm no longer going to be a part of this. It's no matter what organization you're a part of, I feel like it's super hard, especially when that's your life. But to know like you're going to leave something and potentially like your family's not going to talk to you, your friends, everybody, like what was the icing on the cake? Because that's a pretty big decision. Like what made you finally go, okay, like I have to leave this? And then maybe do you want to share your story with that? Because it's a pretty amazing story, I think. Literally like fleeing a country.
Yeah, it was pretty wild, super intense while I was going through it, but I'm so grateful for my whole experience, and everything that's happened has absolutely been what I needed to happen, and it's just given me so much more confidence in myself. Like,
definitely.
It's been wild. Yeah, definitely. I'm sorry, what was the question again?
Yeah, so do you want to maybe... No, you're good. So do you maybe want to share your story with everybody as to like what finally caused you to leave?
Absolutely. At the time, I was married and living in a third world country. I was living in Central America and Nicaragua, doing kind of missionary work and teaching the Bible to people in English in a foreign country. And it had always been a dream of mine to live outside the country in a predominantly Spanish-speaking country. And so I felt like I could get married, I could be in this beautiful place, and that this would be a way for me to be able to exist in this, that I could be happy. This was everything that I had wanted. And I just found myself there 4.5 years into being down there. And just, I loved the life, I loved the people, but it was just still something missing. I wasn't happy. And I wasn't happy with my husband, and I just had this indescribable feeling that I was dying, that literally my life force was leaving me. I had no energy to do anything. I was unmotivated. I was severely depressed, had gained like almost 80 pounds, and I'm really small, so that's like a huge huge health like thing for me. My migraines were horrible. I was almost like bedridden still in this beautiful place. So I was just really frustrated, and I was trying to remember the last thing that I felt anything for, like a stirring in my soul for anything. I was just grasping. The only thing that was really giving me any comfort there was my dog. Like he was my whole life, and unfortunately, I had to leave him when I left, but he was the only thing that was like really keeping me going. I was racking my brain. And the last thing that I could not escape that kept reoccurring was my now husband. We had been childhood friends and sweethearts and like lost contacts, but I never forgot him. And I still loved him. And so he kept popping back up in my brain, and I was like, no, I'm not going to contact him. I just kept trying to talk myself out of it. But when I would remember him and like the things that we felt and just our relationship, it stirred up this feeling inside of me of remembering who I was and like that child that I used to be, and being more energetic, being more passionate, like having hope and excitement for your life and for the possibility of what your life could be. And now I just found myself like just feeling so broken and afraid and, you know, contemplating all these changes. And I bit the bullet. It took me about 2 months of contemplating whether I was going to contact him. And I did. But I decided within myself that if he felt the same way still after all these years, that I would absolutely give it a shot and I wouldn't look back, no regrets. And of course he did. As soon as we got back in contact with each other, it was just like we picked up from the last day that we had communicated, and it was just like nothing had ever changed. And I just felt my spirit come back into me. I felt this reignition of my life, and I had the hope that this could be better, things could be different, and I could make choices that could change things for the better for me. So I planned, and he helped me to plan to organize a flight out of there to come back to the United States. And so my then first husband, I had to keep everything secret because I didn't feel safe confronting all of that there with the situation that I was in. I was in a foreign country. I was not with my family.
Right. Well, and it's not just confronting your husband, it's confronting like his family and elders, and like it's not like one person you're dealing with.
No, and there was no way out of that for me, that I felt that I was going to survive emotionally. Like even physically, I couldn't. I was in such a weakened state at that point where I was contemplating like ending my life if I would have had to do all that there with everyone. So I did what I had to do, and I got out, and I never really looked back from that. And I've been here in North Carolina now for going on 3 years in November, and it's been amazing. Me and my husband then got married last year, so it's been just incredible having him. And he was not raised a Jehovah's Witness, but his mom married someone, and they ended up coming into our congregation when we were young. I think I was 8, and he was like about 10 years old. So he is no longer associated with the witnesses either, but he always left it open for me, you know, never pressured me to do anything, and always was like, hey, if you want to go back, that's totally up to you. I'm not going to force you to do anything either way. That's your decision. And so he's been really like instrumental in helping me to feel safe and secure and able to explore things now that make me happy and bring me joy. And, you know, really just, we have the opportunity to start over, and we've really tried to build a life that both of us just find joy in and that we can be happy in. But we are the designers of our own reality. So, and that's been a huge takeaway from this whole thing. You can make decisions that can change your reality for the better, and that you can be happy with, and you can have the satisfaction of creating this life that brings you an immense amount of joy and like happiness and fulfillment, which I never really thought was possible. I never thought I had dreams or ambitions or passions, and it turns out I do.
So how has your spiritual journey been since you left that? Because that's a lot to kind of unpack.
I spent a good portion of the first year when I arrived here in North Carolina with a lot of time by myself. And that was exactly what I needed. I needed a break. I needed to sit with myself because I never was able to sit alone with myself and just be with my own thoughts. It was overwhelming. Yeah. So I had this time. I started meditating, which was difficult when I first started. Yeah. Just 1 minute at a time would be almost excruciating. Yeah. But I just kept with it and kept trying to do 1 minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and just keeping with it. And I would find all these things that would come up, emotions, memories, regrets, things I just needed to process through, but I was having a hard time letting that go. I was still feeling like a tremendous amount of guilt and also pressure from family and friends to like return, but it didn't feel like that was going to help me at that point. It didn't feel like that was what I needed to be doing. Yeah. So I really, after the first about a year and a half, I was still having some doubts, and I really put out to the universe. I was like, hey, am I supposed to go back to this? Is that what I'm supposed to do? Or can I let this go, and can I explore some different avenues, some different opportunities? And it's so crazy that you mentioned that occult documentary, because as soon as I said that, in the same week, I found your podcast episode on leaving a cult. I watched a documentary episode that was actually completely on Jehovah's Witnesses and interviewing some people on their experiences. And it was another TV program that I had watched as well. And it was just overwhelmingly clear the information that I was receiving. I was like, okay, I can let this go. Yeah. So I really did. I tried to let that go, and I gave myself permission to not be afraid of other alternatives and exploring and learning about different things. And that's why I really loved your podcast, because I could tell even from the beginning of your podcast, we had a similar background. I just felt your approach and your perspective on things was very similar to mine, and how I react to different things that I was scared of before. Yeah. Absolutely. Energy. The first friend that I made here, I think she said the universe in one of the first conversations at least. And I looked at her like she had 3 eyeballs. And now I'm being able to explore chakras. I've always been hugely curious about astrology. And so I've been able to kind of delve into that, and your astro updates and episodes and things have been amazing. But I never realized, I've always been hugely influenced by the moon. So incorporating some moon rituals and different things like that has actually made a huge difference in my life and helped me to be more grounded. And I think the biggest difference is that I used to think that being spiritual automatically meant that you had to be religious. Yeah. And I think that at this point in my life, I found myself to be more spiritual than at any other point in my life, even though I had been very religious. But I just think that just gave me kind of an opportunity to be more open-minded. I've found myself to be incredibly less judgmental of other people and their beliefs, and just exploring and not putting so much pressure on myself that I have to know all the answers, right or wrong. I just feel like sometimes people make everything out to be black or white. And honestly, I feel like a lot of the complexities are actually in that middle area, in that gray area. So just giving myself permission to explore.
That's awesome. It's exciting, right?
Yes, it's so exciting. And I've actually just been trying to refocus on things that I loved when I was a child, like crystals. I had a huge crystal collection and gems and was very, very interested. I had books and all that, and kind of lost touch with that in growing up. And so it's been amazing to kind of reintroduce that into my life and see that joy that it used to bring me, that it still brings that to me. Yeah. So I just think that those things are, do those things that bring you joy. Even if you can reintroduce one little thing that brings you more joy, makes a big difference.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. What, What do you think has helped you really regain your power? Because a big part of leaving that is finding your own voice and personal power. Is there anything specific or any kind of practices that you found that have really helped you regain that power?
Yeah, I've been working through your chakra book, the Light It Up book, and I've actually just been kind of focusing the last 6 months primarily on my root chakra. And like I said before, I had a hard time staying in my body, so to speak, and not disassociating from things that were unpleasant or painful or like difficult to process. So I think that's been huge. I just practicing being in my body and listening to what my body is telling me, and that telling myself that I'm, safe, I'm grounded, I'm secure, I can be in this place, I can take up space, I have something of value to offer the world, I have opinions, I have a voice that I can use now to express that. And if you would have told me when I arrived here 3 years ago that I would be doing a podcast with a former Jehovah's Witness and we'd be talking about chakras and like energy and different things like that, I would have laughed. Like, it's totally unimaginable for me, but I couldn't be happier. It's been so exciting.
Oh, that's awesome. It's such a, it almost feels like a parallel universe when you leave something like that. And then like, I look back now and I'm like, I can't even recognize that person. And I I get it because I needed to go through that, and that's, helped me help other people. And I believe that's why we go through those things, right? That's our contract, and we're supposed to do that stuff to help people. But it's unimaginable now for me to look back on that and be like, I can't believe I knocked on people's doors and was like reading the Bible to people.
I know. It's crazy. Kind of an aggressive thing to do when you're thinking about it, but I never viewed myself that way. Oh no. But it really kind of is.
It is. Well, and I still, I don't have any ill feelings towards anybody that does that stuff. I think the organization's fucked up. And I think my husband and me have this conversation the other day. He was like, there's got to be somebody that's profiting. And I was like, it's one of the few organizations. It's not like some churches where there's somebody who's living in a big house somewhere.
No, I was like, it's not readily apparent that way.
It's not. And I was like, there's people in control. He's like, but there's got to be a reason. And I was like, I don't know. Maybe I'm just really still blinded to that stuff, but
I don't know.
It's not some organizations you can see it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a person, and I'm like, there's not a person. It's weird.
No, it's not. I wouldn't say it's constructed like that, but I do absolutely understand why people would be gravitated for that.
Yeah.
Or why they would choose to stay. I know, when my parents were first generation of Jehovah's Witnesses, and considering their background in childhood, I knew that they were just trying to offer a better life for their children, for their families, and I don't think there's anything wrong with people wanting to do that, but when it comes to you excluding people from associations or excluding your family members, to an extreme, I guess everyone has to make their own decisions and choices about what they're going to do, but personally that never really resonated or felt good to me to do that.
Well, and I think my biggest issue with all of that is, as a female, you're literally made to be submissive. And there's some, I had some really fucked up stuff happen as a teenager, sitting in front of men who I'd known my whole life and having to, tell them details about sexual encounters and stuff. And that fucked me up to this day. We were having this conversation the other day, and I was we were talking about how they have all these rules, right? About how you have sex, and you're not supposed to have oral sex and all this stuff. And he was like, wait, what? And I was like, yeah. He was like, are you serious? And I was like, yeah. I was like, so imagine sitting in a room full of men who you've known since you were a little girl and then being like, so you had oral sex, and not just wanting to know you had oral sex, but they want like all the nitty gritty details. And he was like, what? And I'm like, yeah, they want to know like, how long were you down there? Was there any type of like fluid? Like they want to know everything. I was like, and now let's talk about my root chakra and my sacral chakra.
Yes.
That's the stuff. It's terrible. And I'm like, that's the part, like, I'm like, okay, that's where it's like, that's kind of fucked up.
Yeah, exactly. And like, yeah, you're exactly right. I went through periods of rebellion in childhood and my teen years, and it was completely normal things. You know, you're developing as a young adult and learning about your body, learning how to interact with other people, learning about sexual desires and things, and like you're absolutely shamed and almost humiliated for having these things, and you're not trying hard enough like to shut these things down, which is the ultimate goal. And that really explains like why all of my chakras were like completely shut down when I started trying to work with them. I could trace that back absolutely to that point of origin.
It's crazy. I mean, I feel like we could talk all day about that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh my goodness. Well, what would be some advice you would give somebody that is maybe, even if they're not leaving, something like the Jehovah Witnesses, but maybe they're just looking to leave a difficult situation where they haven't been able to really step into the power? What advice from your experience would you give them?
I would say that obviously this is an intensely personal decision. Everyone has to make, their own choices on what's best for them. But I would absolutely advise to sit and spend some time with yourself, away from the influence of and constant barrage of advice and
I think that's awesome.
Or whatever. Just sit some time with yourself and just really see how you're feeling about yourself. Like, are you satisfied with your life? Are you happy? Do you have goals? Like, are you motivated? Do you have joy in your life? Like, these things don't have to be just like glimpses. You can have a life full of joy and happiness. Like, there are other possibilities of being in the world. So I'll just encourage you to bring a little bit more joy in your life. You never know what kind of spark that's going to start up in yourself, and it might give you the courage to make some of those difficult changes. One quote that I always love, and it helps me like when things are difficult, but it's from Christopher Robin from Winnie the Pooh, and it's that you are braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think. And so I just try to always tell myself that when I'm going through something difficult, that I never would have thought that I would have been able to make the changes or deal with any of the things that I have. But I've grown in confidence with myself and really been able to learn that I am stronger, I am smarter than maybe other people or even myself give me credit for. So just don't stop searching. That would be my biggest advice. Don't give up.
That's a really good piece of advice. I love it.
Thanks.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your story.
Thank you.
It has been really good.
You've been a huge inspiration. I really appreciate your support.
Thank you. And I'm excited to see how you continue to evolve, because this is just the beginning of your journey.
Yes, I know. I think that's the most exciting part, that I'm just starting to explore these different avenues and different things, and they've already made such a huge difference and shifts in my life. So I'm just really excited to see what's next in store.
Oh, me too. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on today.
Thank you.
For all the people who judge without knowing, just throw the peace on, tell them good vibes only.